The story begins with a young man named Lee Hansu. He is being treated at the hospital, and he likes playing games since childhood. Because he was being treated at the hospital, he always played games. He thinks games are an important thing in his life, but when playing games he always loses, and always blames the game. And you will get bored with a game if you play it for too long and keep losing. One day, he finds that playing games isn't as fun as it used to be. No matter the genre of a game, he plays all the games that come out every year. But the problem is the game that came out really sucks. The story and the world-building game are almost all the same and stereotypical. There is no new system. He was bored because no new original game had come out. Then after trying to search the internet for a while, he found a new game that caught his attention. The game is titled Dungeon & Stone. The genre of this game is indie RPG. Games with 2D pixel graphics are rare nowadays. This game was only in English, but it wasn't the type of game he was used to playing. But because this game is free, so there's no harm in trying. What's interesting about this game is, this game has many characters in various classes to choose from. Because it might be rare to play this game, so he chose a class randomly. And this game is a game with a vertical interface type. With good visuals, it makes people who play it feel comfortable and forget the time. He was surprised that time had passed so quickly while playing the game, and it didn't feel like it was already late at night. And finally, he was obsessed with continuing to play Dungeon & Stone games. This game has its own uniqueness, where all NPCs are needed to play this game. And when you die in the game, you have to start over from the beginning. In the beginning, why he chose and played this game was just for fun, and to fill time in the hospital. But over time he became obsessed with completing the game. Because he always lost when playing this game, he tried to find tutorials for the game on the internet, but what he got was there was not a single tutorial or information about this game. Knowing this, he finally determined to finish the game with his own ability. From the first time he played this game in the hospital, then until he became a public service worker and until he got out of there. While he was in college and until he graduated, during a job interview and accepted to work in a company. And when he leaves and then comes home from work, he always plays Dungeon & Stone games, even though he always loses when playing them. It didn't feel like 9 years had passed when he played the game Dungeon & Stone. And finally, the wait he had been waiting for reached the final boss room of the Gate of the Abyss. He felt pleased with his accomplishments during these 9 years, as no one had ever made it to the final boss room. Finally, he decided to enter the final boss room, even though he wasn't sure he could beat the final boss on the first try. While waiting for the process to enter the last boss's room, he thought of gathering as much information as possible that could help defeat this final boss. But how surprised he was when the loading process to enter the Gate of the Abyss was complete. Suddenly the game changed to using Korean. He thought that this game was only supported in English, because he had tried desperately to learn English to play this game. After checking complete, suddenly a blinding white light appeared that seemed to burn all over his body. And finally he lost consciousness. When he woke up, he saw someone shouting with a loud voice, and to his surprise, when he opened his eyes, he was faced with an unbelievable situation. He was surrounded by barbarians wherever he looked. And old man's barbarians who were giving speeches excitedly. However, he did not understand what the old man was saying. He tried to calm down and gather information about the situation he was in now. When trying to check the situation, how surprised he was when he found out and realized that he was in the body of a barbarian. Then from a distance came the voice of an old man who at first was giving a speech and then called out the names of the barbarians one by one. And the name called is expected to come forward to the stage with the old man. It turned out that the old man's goal was to call out the names of the young barbarians, to choose a suitable weapon for him and officially make the young barbarian a warrior. The young man was familiar with the ritual. And soon the young man realized something, that he was in the game Dungeon and Stone. And it all started when he played the game Dungeon and Stone and chose the character of a barbarian. When he was still confused about the situation, then he heard the voice of a barbarian who started to realize and said that he had entered the game Dungeon and Stone. It turned out that he was not alone in entering this game. The barbarian also seemed confused by the situation he was in. Suddenly an old man's voice screamed as he heard the confused young barbarian's words, with a look of horror and mingled with rage. The old man approached the young barbarian and asked who had said that. He emphatically answered that it wasn't him, and then he looked at the young barbarian. The old man then looked at the young barbarian angrily. The young barbarian then asked the old man, "Is this a Dungeon and Stone game?" But the old man immediately slashed the young barbarian's neck to pieces. The young man was shocked by what he had just seen. He tries to calm down so as not to become the next victim. He would die if he showed the same expression as the slain barbarian. Suddenly the old man said that the young barbarian he killed was possessed by an evil demon, and told the other barbarians not to be swayed by what the evil demon said. And finally the old man ordered to continue the ritual. The ritual event was back to running smoothly as usual. With that incident, finally the young man could see the fact that people like him who entered the game Dungeon and Stone were called evil spirits. The second fact is that he will die if anyone finds out that he is an evil spirit. And the last fact is that his rolling head could have been a victim like the incident just now. And the conclusion is that he must immediately get out of this game if he doesn't want to die. But there was one more problem he faced. He didn't know the name of the barbarian body he entered. He thought hard to think of a strategy on how to get him to know the name of the barbarian he entered. Finally, when it was the turn of a barbarian's name to be called, he stepped forward with a feeling of hesitation. But it was true that the name that was called was the name of the barbarian character he entered. And the barbarian character's name is Bjorn, Jandal's son, Bjorn. That's the story of this chapter ends. Look forward to the story of the next chapter in the next video.